today I'm going to be making a Sisu cake. I've been watching a lot of Raya and the Last Dragon and I really wanted to have a go. I couldn't decide between a really simple one or a really complicated 3D one, so we're going to go simple today and then I might make a more complicated one for another tutorial. If you guys want me to do that, let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see me make. I forgot an apron, so it's probably going to get a bit messy. Okay, so I'm starting with some 5-inch cakes. I baked 3 and then I cut each one in half. I don't know if I'll use all 6 layers or not, but I've got one of the masonette cake drums so that I don't have to decorate it. It's already kind of covered and decorated for me, but just wipe it clean before you use them. I'm going to use some buttercream. My buttercream looks a bit grey actually on here, but it looks purple in real life. On camera it looks a bit grey. I'm just going to layer them up with a layer of buttercream in between each one. I have had these cakes in the freezer, guys, so they are partially frozen. They've started to defrost, but they're still a little bit firm in the middle from me having frozen them. And it's up to you how tall you want to go. Have a look from the side to check that it's level. So keep checking from the side all the time. If I don't do that, I quite often have it lopsided and I don't realise. I'm just going to crumb coat it. So I'm going to put a thin layer of my buttercream all the way around the edge and I'm going to give it a bit of a scrape. Just make sure your scraper is as tall as your cake, just to make life a bit easier. If your scraper's not as tall as your cake, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes I end up with a line where the top of my scraper was if it's a bit shorter than the cake. Crumb coat done, let's get it in the fridge. While the cake's in the fridge, guys, I'm going to make some eyes. So we're going to make these out of fondant or modelling paste, whichever you want is fine, but make sure you roll it fairly thin. And I'm using a round cutter and I'm just pressing it in lightly, so I don't want to cut all the way through because this is going to be the pupil. And then what I'm going to do is, having a look at a picture of Sisu for a bit of a guideline, I'm going to draw with my Dresden tool or mark with my Dresden tool roughly the shape. I'll use a smaller circle for the pupil. You can freehand the circles if you want, but I'm not very good at freehand drawing circles. Then I'm going to cut out the shape. So I'm going to cut around the outer edge like so. I'm going to turn it over and then I'm going to mark around it for my second eye. Now, if you've got an image of Sisu the right size, you know, you could use the eyes as templates that are on that image. You could cut them out and actually draw around those if you don't want to freestyle it like what I am doing here. So we'll just make the same marks on the other eye. I'm going to snip in a little bit for some eyelashes. If you prefer it solid eyelashes, you don't have to put all these little lines in. I'm just using the little nail scissors. Now, guys, I haven't used these on my nails. These are purely what I use for my cakes. They've never been used for anything else. Do check the size of your eyes against your cake as well, guys, to make sure that they fit with your cake. I'm going to use some edible pens to colour in the iris in the eye. So I'm going with a deep purple. So we've got like a circle. I'm going around the outer edge of that circle we've drawn, and then we're putting kind of little lines inwards. I'm blending it a little bit with a slightly damp brush. Apologies, guys, my dog is in the background and he's a bit whingy today. Anywhere that you go too dark, you can rub that colour out a little bit with just, again, a damp brush and just keep going over it. So I'm going to then use a black line where I want the edge of the eyelashes to be. You don't have to do this in pen because what I'm then doing is the bigger parts I'm painting in edible black powder mixed with clear alcohol. But the pen just gives me a neater line on that inside edge. I'm going to go for a tiny dot of white in each eye as well for a reflection. And then you're just going to repeat the same in the other eye. But just make sure the pens you use are edible. Okay, so let's make Sisu's horns. She's got 2 at the front. I'm using a modelling paste for this because it's a little bit firmer. But you can use modelling chocolate. It's quite nice for this because it tastes nice. So I'm going to make 2 of these. I'm keeping them fairly flat at the back. If I go too big, they're going to be a little bit too heavy for my cake. So I don't want to go gigantic. So the smaller one that I'm going to put sort of in front of the other one is kind of pointed at the bottom. I'm hoping will come down over the front of the cake a little bit. So I'm just cutting a little bit out the back of the bottom of it so that it will sit on the edge of my cake. And I've just got a little container here. It's about a similar size to what the cake's going to be. So if I try and press it on the front, it's just going to help me work out getting it on to the cake. It's making that indentation ready for me. I'm just going to insert a wooden skewer. So these are the wooden kebab skewers that you buy for using on meat. Apologies, I've got lots of noise going on in the background today. And then let's put some patterning on. I think she kind of has swirly patternings and stuff in a slightly deeper blue on the horns. Now this blue is much darker, but when we're going to add powder to it, it's going to tone it down and it's going to be far less obvious. Once you've put the colour on, you can then dust it up. So this is like a pearlized blue colour that I've got. What I'll do, guys, is I'll put links below the video to everything that I've used as well for this one. It's very messy, I've got it everywhere. So you can see it, but it's very subtle. It shows more in some lights than it does in others. And then you're just going to repeat the same on the bigger horn. And just have a look at images of Sisu for guidelines of where you want to draw the patterns. Or you could just make up your own patterns, a bit like what I'm doing. Give it a dust. Right, guys, we're going to use wafer paper for the dragon's hair or mane. I want to change the colour, so I'm using some dipping solution, or you can use clear alcohol, but I've also got water as well. So I've got about half water, half dipping solution. You can just use water if you want. And I'm mixing the blue powder that I used earlier for the horn. I'm mixing that together to create like a really diluted paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the wafer paper in that. Now, if you completely soak it, it's going to start to dissolve and it's going to get very wet and very sticky. So this one, I think I put a little bit too much on. So you can see it becomes almost quite cloth-like. Can you see how it's gone there? That one is, I just wet it a bit too much, just a bit too much. So let's go again. So I'm going to put slightly less on this time. I'm also putting a little bit of the dry powder. This one's like a purpley colour pearlescent, just a little bit on some areas of it. And then what you want to do is find something a bit curved to kind of scrunch it up and put it over. It's almost like doing wafer paper sails. So I'm going to make a few of those sails and let them dry. Now for my outer layer of buttercream, I'm actually going to make some different buttercream. So because I want it a slightly different colour. I also want it a nice flavour. So this one's called Sweethearts. So that's the icing sugar I'm going to use. It's just flavoured. It's a bit like, you know, like Swizzles sweets. Like Love Hearts and things. It tastes a bit like that. And I'm using the sky blue for the food colouring. So you can get your cake back out the fridge. And then I'm just going to put a layer of buttercream all over it now. So it's a blue colour, so it's maybe slightly more turquoisey or slightly more greeny than I had planned. But that's because I didn't really whiten up my buttercream before putting the blue into it. But I'm fairly happy with this colour. It's okay. So I'm putting a fairly thick layer all the way around. And I'm just going to scrape. Now, those of you that watch me regularly will know I don't do much in buttercream. It's not a strong point of mine. You should avoid buttercream. And I should really practice to get a bit better at it. But I'm just going to scrape all the way around, fill in any bits where you've got air bubbles and sort of scrape again. And then have a look, just check if it's still level. I haven't got it particularly neat on the top. I'm not too worried because a lot of the top's going to be covered on this one. I'm also going to try and airbrush just to darken and change the colour a little bit at the bottom. So in my airbrush, I've actually got that same powder that I used for the wafer paper and on the horn. And this time it's just diluted with clear alcohol. I've diluted it quite a bit. And we're just going to spray it on there. So now I'm going to attach the horns that I've made. So that smaller horn is going to go near the very front edge. So that part of it just comes over the front of the cake. You can see I've put my cake slightly off center on my cake board as well. There we go. Then the bigger one's just going to insert just behind it. I think I've put this in slightly to one side. And then you're going to take your pieces of wafer paper. Just make sure they've dried up a bit. They don't want to be super floppy at the stage where you're putting them on. Mine have dried up fairly quick. And just place them now on the cake. Keep having a look from the front to check what it looks like. They should just press into the buttercream. And you can play around with all the placement. I think I didn't quite make enough to fill the back as much as I wanted to. But you can make more of the wafer paper sails that go on. And you can add a few little sprinkles. These ones are filled with chocolate in the middle and then just covered in like coloured candy. So I'm just going to put some of these on, just for decoration. Maybe some smaller ones. Yeah, I should probably fill in the back a bit more with more wafer paper, I think. Okay. Next we want to put on our eyes. Now I wish I'd stuck mine a little bit lower. And I was very undecided about whether I should do the nose or not. And I put in little nostrils, and then I decided it didn't quite look right, so I wanted to put in like the line for the mouth underneath. And to be honest, guys, I think I wish I hadn't put the nostrils and the mouth in, but I did it. It's on there anyway. I also darkened them with just a tiny bit of edible dust So it was black dust that I used there. I also then went over with a bit more airbrushing because I wanted to darken around the nose area. But sometimes less is more. I just put in a little line there and then I tried to darken it again so it looked a bit shaded. Probably looked nicer without. I don't know, you guys let me know in the comments if you preferred it with or without. Just gonna do some more wafer paper bits quickly. So I should really let this dry. But I put it on slightly wet anyway. So if it's just slightly wet, it's easy to move around and shape it. If you completely soak it, it just kind of dissolves and goes really wet and sticky. So I need to do some more on the back there, guys, still. But there it is. Very messy. That's it, guys. All finished. I'd love to see your versions of them. And let me know in the comments below if you thought it looked nicer with or without a nose. I think maybe I'll do another version of Sisu, maybe a 3D one or one of the face cakes. Let me know if you'd like to see another one, maybe a more detailed one than this one. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Don't forget to check out our other tutorials on our YouTube channel. And if you enjoyed it, please do give it a like. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and more.